Welcome back to part 2. Her lawyer did call. 3 weeks later, I received a formal letter requesting a modification to the custody arrangement, citing Vanessa's increased stability and desire for a more active parenting role. I called the legal aid office I'd found online and made an appointment with a family law attorney named Patricia Morell. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and kind eyes who'd built her practice on helping people like me, ordinary people who couldn't afford the expensive lawyers but needed someone in their corner anyway. "You've got a strong case," she told me after reviewing my documentation. I'd brought everything: school records, medical records, photos, a letter from Eli's therapist, testimonies from teachers and neighbors. The court prioritizes stability and the child's best interest. You can demonstrate 2 years of primary caregiving, while she can demonstrate 8 months of virtually no contact. What are my chances? If you're asking whether she can force a 50-50 split, very unlikely. If you're asking whether she might get increased visitation, possibly, if she can show she's made genuine changes. I thought about that for a long moment. What if I didn't fight the visitation? I asked slowly. What if I agreed to a graduated schedule, supervised visits first, then weekend visits if they go well, building up over time? Patricia looked at me carefully. "That's very generous, considering the circumstances." "It's not about generosity," I said. "It's about Eli. He deserves the chance to have a relationship with his mother if she's genuinely willing to show up. And if she's not." I paused. "Then that'll become clear pretty quickly, and the court will see it too. You're taking the high road." "I'm taking the road that lets me sleep at night," I corrected. "There's a difference." We went to mediation instead of court. It was cheaper, faster, and less traumatic for everyone involved. Vanessa sat across the table from me with her lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Patricia sat beside me in a practical blazer she'd probably worn to 100 of these meetings. The mediator laid out the situation clearly. I had primary custody, Vanessa wanted more time, and the question was what arrangement would serve Eli's best interest. "Mr. Webb," the mediator said, "you're proposing a graduated visitation schedule with supervised visits initially. Can you explain your reasoning?" I looked at Vanessa when I answered. "I don't want to punish my ex-wife for her choices, but I do want to protect my son from being hurt again. If Vanessa is genuinely committed to being present in Eli's life, not just when it's convenient, but consistently, then I support them building a relationship. But that trust has to be earned back, and it has to be proven over time." "Ms. Webb," the mediator turned to Vanessa. "How do you respond to that?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than I'd heard in years. "I understand," she said. "I haven't been the mother he deserves. And I haven't been fair to Marcus, who's done everything while I—" She stopped, collected herself. "I'm not asking for equal custody. I'm asking for a chance to do better." The expensive lawyer looked annoyed that his client was being reasonable, but Patricia gave me a small nod. We settled on supervised visits twice a month for the first 3 months, to be evaluated and potentially increased if they went well. Vanessa would pay child support, not much, given her current financial situation, but something. I would remain the primary custodial parent. And most importantly, any future changes would require demonstrating consistent, positive involvement in Eli's life. We signed the agreement, and as we were leaving, Vanessa stopped me in the hallway. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't have to be fair to me." "I'm not being fair to you," I replied. "I'm being fair to our son. There's a difference." She nodded slowly, understanding. "The money thing," she said. "I was wrong to ask. I was desperate, and I made it your problem. And that wasn't right. I'm sorry." "I appreciate that," I said. "And I meant it. For what it's worth," she added, "you're a better parent than I gave you credit for. Better than I ever was." I didn't respond to that. Some truths don't need confirmation. The first supervised visit happened on a Saturday afternoon at a family center downtown. I won't tell you it was perfect, because it wasn't. Eli was nervous. Vanessa was trying too hard. But they played Uno together, and she remembered his favorite color was blue, and when I picked him up 2 hours later, he had that small, cautious smile that said maybe this wasn't terrible. The visits continued. Every 2 weeks, without fail. And slowly, so slowly I barely noticed, something shifted. Vanessa showed up early. She asked better questions. She listened more than she talked. She learned about his current interests, his friends, the book series he was obsessed with. After 3 months, the supervised visits became unsupervised. For hours every other Saturday. After 6 months, she added Sunday afternoons once a month. She wasn't perfect. She still made mistakes. She still sometimes got distracted by her phone, still sometimes chose work over presence. But she was trying, genuinely trying, and Eli could feel the difference. Mom asked if we could go to the Science Museum next weekend. He told me one evening, his voice careful, like he was testing how I'd react. "That sounds fun, buddy. You love the planetarium there. You're not mad." I set down the dish I was washing and looked at him. "I'm not mad. I'm glad she's showing up for you. You deserve that. But she wasn't there before. For a really long time. No, she wasn't. And that hurt you. It hurt both of us." I dried my hands and sat down next to him. "But people can change, Eli. Not always, and not without effort. But sometimes, if they really want to, they can become different versions of themselves. Better versions. Do you think she's better now? I think she's trying to be. And that's what matters. He was quiet for a moment, processing. I still love you more, he said softly. I know, buddy. And that's okay. Love isn't a competition. A year after our coffee shop confrontation, Vanessa called me again. I almost didn't answer. But I'd learned by then that running from hard conversations only delayed them, never prevented them. Marcus, do you have a minute? Sure. I wanted to thank you. Her voice was different again. Steadier. For giving me the chance to know my son. For not shutting me out when you had every right to. You're welcome. And I wanted you to know, my mom passed away last week. I'm sorry, Vanessa. Truly. Thank you. It was peaceful, in the end. She got to meet Eli a few times before she died. That meant everything to her. She paused. It meant everything to me, too. I almost didn't have that, because of my own choices. I didn't say anything. Just let her talk. I've been thinking a lot about what you said that day in the coffee shop. About being a mother versus being someone who gave birth. And you were right. I gave birth to Eli, but you're the one who raised him. You're the one who taught him what love looks like when it's not convenient or easy or glamorous. Vanessa. No, let me finish. I spent so many years being angry at my life, at what I'd given up, at how small my world felt when everyone else seemed to be moving forward. And I blamed you for that. I blamed Eli for that. But it was never your fault. It was mine, for not being brave enough to find a different path, for not being humble enough to appreciate what I had. She took a shaky breath. I'm in therapy now. Real therapy, not just complaining to friends over wine. I'm working on myself. I'm learning to be present, to be grateful, to stop treating the people I love like obstacles to the life I think I deserve. I felt something soften in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. Something more complex. I'm glad you're doing that work, I said. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect Eli to, not completely. But I wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what you did, what you built, what you sacrificed. And I'm grateful. Not because it benefited me, but because it saved our son. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment. Not the cramped 2-bedroom we'd started in, but a modest 3-bedroom house I'd been able to afford with careful saving and Mrs. Chen's gift. Eli was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and the silence felt different than the loneliness I'd known years before. It felt like peace. Eli turned 12 in January. We celebrated with a party at the local rec center. Nothing fancy, just pizza and arcade games and a dozen kids from his school running around hopped up on sugar and competition. Vanessa came. She brought a present he'd actually wanted, a specific book series he'd been talking about, and she stayed for the whole party. She helped clean up afterward, laughing with the other parents, and when Eli hugged her goodbye, it looked natural. Easy. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Eli was in his room reading one of his new books, I stood in my kitchen, a real kitchen now, with counter space and appliances that worked, and thought about the man I'd been 3 years ago. That Marcus had been terrified, broken, convinced he was failing at everything that mattered. That Marcus had measured his worth by what he'd lost instead of what he'd kept. I wasn't that Marcus anymore. I'd learned something crucial in those years of struggle. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the quiet moments, the packed lunches, the homework help, the bedtime routines, the steady presence that says, I'm here, I'm not leaving, you can count on me. Vanessa had wanted everything in the divorce. The house, the car, the savings. All the things that looked like security from the outside. But she'd given away the only thing that actually mattered. And I'd built a life around that one precious thing she'd left behind. Some people might say I got my revenge when I refused to give Vanessa the inheritance money. When I stood my ground and protected what was mine and Eli's. But revenge implies I wanted to hurt her back, to make her feel what I'd felt, to balance some cosmic scale of suffering. That's not what happened. What happened was simpler and more profound. I chose my son over everything else. I chose stability over drama. I chose presence over punishment. And in doing so, I discovered that the opposite of revenge isn't forgiveness. It's peace. The warehouse promoted me last year. I'm a shift supervisor now, which means better pay and regular hours. I'm taking online classes 2 nights a week, slowly finishing that teaching degree I'd abandoned a decade ago. It'll take me another 3 years, but I'm in no rush. Eli's doing great. He's in middle school now, playing on the soccer team, still reading above grade level, still making me laugh with his dry observations about the world. He sees Vanessa every other weekend and 1 evening a week for dinner. Their relationship isn't perfect, but it's real, and it's theirs. Sometimes he asks me about the divorce, about why things happened the way they did. I tell him the truth, that sometimes people make choices they regret, that grown-ups are just humans trying their best and sometimes failing, that family is complicated and messy and doesn't always look like the pictures in storybooks. And I tell him the most important thing, that he was never the problem, that he was always wanted, always loved, always worth every sacrifice. I think about Mrs. Chen sometimes, about her quiet generosity, her belief that I was worthy of her life savings. I think about how she saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, a good man doing his best in impossible circumstances. I hope I'm proving her right. I hope when Eli looks back on his childhood, he doesn't remember the small apartment or the thrift store clothes, or the times we had to choose between electricity and groceries. I hope he remembers feeling safe, feeling loved, feeling like he mattered more than anything else in the world. Because he did. He does. He always will. If you've stuck with me through this entire story, thank you. I know it was long, but this isn't a journey you can rush through. The hard parts, the quiet growth, the eventual peace. If this resonated with you, if you've been the person who stayed when someone else left, if you know what it means to build something from nothing, hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. People ask me sometimes if I'm bitter, if I'm angry at how things turned out, at the years I spent struggling, at the life I could have had if circumstances had been different. The answer is no. Because that struggle taught me things I never would have learned otherwise. It taught me that wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in trust, in presence, in the small daily choices that build a life worth living. It taught me that strength doesn't look like dominance or power over others. It looks like showing up when you're exhausted, choosing kindness when you want to be cruel, protecting what matters when everything else is falling apart. It taught me that revenge is overrated, that the best response to someone who underestimates you isn't to prove them wrong. It's to build something so solid they become irrelevant to your happiness. And it taught me that being a parent, a real parent, isn't about biology or legal documents or who makes more money. It's about being the person your child calls for in the dark. It's about being the steady ground beneath their feet when everything else is shifting. It's about loving someone so completely that their well-being becomes more important than your own ego, your own comfort, your own need to be right. Vanessa wanted everything in the divorce except our son, and I got everything that mattered. That's not revenge. That's justice. Eli just called me from his room. He wants help with his math homework, pre-algebra now, which is definitely beyond me. But we'll figure it out together, the way we always do. That's my life now. Homework help and soccer practice, and teaching myself things I never learned, so I can help him learn them. Some people might think that's small, that I settled for less than I deserved. But those people have never felt what I feel every time my son looks at me with complete trust, knowing I'll be there, knowing I'll never leave, knowing he's safe. That's not small. That's everything. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life and choices and what really matters, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And please, share this with any single parents out there, anyone who's had to rebuild from nothing, anyone who needs to hear that staying is its own kind of strength. They need to know they're not alone. Share this story. Let's build a community of people who understand that real victory isn't about winning. It's about showing up, day after day, for the people who need us most. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, the person who stays isn't the one who lost. They're the one who won something worth keeping.